So, welcome to the Unnamed Podcast right now. Aaron and I have just been having so many conversations lately about cyber liability insurance, riders, security controls that need to be in place so that that policy fits. And we just wanted to have a conversation that we could record and share with whoever wanted to listen to it, because there's a lot of things out there that companies are not looking at. So, those are the two topics that we're going to talk about today and how they pull together. This is pretty much just off the cuff. Uh, Hopefully, there's some information here that can help some businesses as to what they should be looking at with regards to cyber liability insurance and the cyber controls that need to go in place with those. So, Aaron, what's on your mind now after our conversation this morning?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of folks, they think that either they need one or the other, not both. And I think today's day and age, it's no longer a luxury of having a policy. I think it's something that you absolutely need. Um,
Right.
I think we talk all the time in the sense that, yeah, we're deploying a proactive solution and doing security awareness training for your staff and doing all the right things to start protecting your organization. But at the end of the day, everything that we're putting in place is being reverse engineered somewhere, right? Somewhere on the
Right.
globe, they're trying to figure out, how do I evade these protections and how do I get around them? And if you don't have a cyber policy in place, when they figure out how to get past your stack, you're going to be in a world of hurt.
Right. Yeah, I think that's, we keep seeing riders on people's policy and this tied to their business policy. And I think, not understanding what they signed up for. We've seen $50,000 limits and we've seen $5,000 limits on line items. That's not going to cover much of anything, which means the rest of the stuff is going to come out of pocket. And I don't think business owners really realize that. I think there there's so many pieces to this that they're pushing it off. They're pushing it to the side, and maybe they're hoping that someone at their company is looking at this, or they're hoping that their IT company has this covered. But they've got to start to wise up a little bit, and they got to start looking at these things themselves to understand, you know, look, I don't like big government, and I don't like insurance companies, but we got them both. And those are the two entities that are pushing down all the regulations, the restrictions, the requirements for what they want to see. And insurance companies got their butts smacked around from 2020 on with all these ransomwares that they paid, and they're starting to want to recoup their money, and they're starting to put requirements on these businesses. When you don't have, you can't just, I like your term, like you pencil whip the application, and they're just saying, yes, we have this, yes, we have this, yes, we have this. Well, if they find out you don't have it after your breach, they're not going to pay, or it's going to be very minimal. So, insurance companies
Well, and
just don't
and
want to
the
hand out
insurance
money.
companies, the insurance companies, there's been some precedent set that they're starting to sue that customer, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Because I mean, you're lying, you're lying
Right.
on an
Right.
attestation form, and they're just like, yeah, not only are we not going to pay, but we're also going to sue you because this is considered insurance fraud.
Right. Right. And I think just, we see it every day. We're working with it, we're dealing with it. And companies like attorneys, insurance or CPAs, logistics companies, healthcare, um, they're all getting breached, right? And there's a reason why. Maybe sometimes they don't have the right controls in place. Maybe it was a employee that clicked on a link in a phishing email. It still happens, right? And I don't know, you have to pay more attention to what's going on. And I think it's starting to turn around when you start seeing these, like you said, like board members are starting to get, you got a public company, board members, they're starting to come after those guys, those people, I should say, and they're not following what they should be doing. And there's so many pieces of this puzzle. They have to start working with somebody that knows what's going on so they can guide them the right way.
Well, and I think that's I think that's a great thing to bring up, is because if your company is affected by some type of cyber incident, the person that is on the news and in front of the board and in front of regulators, it's not your IT guy,
Right.
right?
Right.
9 times out of 10, it's the CEO. Now there are special cases, right? Like, the solar wind stuff and stuff with Uber, right? The CISO got dragged out and, did some jail time and
Right.
still serving jail time.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the CEO that has to do all the answering. And so I think that's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, and again, I just think they're busy running a company, right? And the news doesn't cover the small and medium-sized businesses that get hit. It's the big companies. So now, you move away from even just a CEO. Now you're talking about a business owner of a company that maybe 3 to 5 million a year in revenue that gets hit. We don't see that. We don't see that in the news. And, they don't want to put that out there that, it's a small hometown business that serves the community, and all of a sudden that community's information has now been breached and it's out on the dark web. Well, geez, now what's going to happen to that business, right? They don't want to let that get out there. Um, and they probably don't want to let people know that they didn't know better. They didn't know what to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to a conversation we had earlier today with somebody in the insurance industry is, I think we find it so often that all these small to medium sized businesses, the ones that do experience a breach or they do experience some type of cyber event, they keep it to themselves, right? They
Hmm.
don't talk about it in their networking groups. They don't talk
Right,
about it with their friends. They don't talk about it with their families because they don't
right,
want it getting out, right? They don't want their
right,
competition to know, and maybe their competition will use that against them, right?
right,
Um, the biggest harm to a small business generally is reputational damage, right? And so they do everything they can to keep it swept under the rug and keep it mum's the word, so that they can recover. They might tell their customers, "Oh, we're experiencing some type of IT issue, and we're working through it."
right,
And realistically, it could be much more significant than that.
right,
Um, so, the important thing, like you and I, again, we've talked about this many times, is cybersecurity is a community problem, and it's going to take a community effort to fight back, right? I
right,
mean, the small businesses have to team up and they have to communicate about it. We have to share between each other the experiences that we had. Talk about how you got hit. Talk about the process of, all right, you got hit. Now, what do we do? Right? Who do
right.
we call? Are we dealing with our own internal guy? Are we working
Hmm.
with an MSP? Do we have a cyber insurance policy? Do I reach out to the cyber insurance company now? Do I call my attorney? Like, which way do I
Right,
turn?
right.
Do you have a plan for when things go sideways?
Yeah,
And most companies don't, right? And so, but talk about that as a group.
right, right,
Talk about the experience. Talk about what it took to recover. Talk about how many days you were down. Talk about, how many days did you have people in the office that you were paying salaries to where they were literally doing nothing because they could do nothing.
right,
Talk about how it affected your customers. Did you leak any sensitive data? Did you lose any customers because of it? Are you still losing customers because of it?
right.
How did that impact your revenue? I mean, there's hundreds of questions that can
Oh
be
yeah,
asked
yeah,
and hundreds of discussions that can be had. But I think that the biggest problem in our industry is that all the big companies they get the media, they get the press, they get all that public view, and the small businesses don't. And part of it is, A, it's not newsworthy, and B, a lot of the guys are just keeping it to themselves. And it
right,
just further hurts everybody trying to protect each other,
right,
especially small business. They all have this idea of, well, you know, I don't hear about the small business in my town being hit, and I don't hear about, any small businesses. I hear Target, I hear Ticketmaster, I hear Mr. Cooper, these
right.
large
Yeah.
multinational,
Caesars,
multi-billion
MGM,
dollar
right,
companies.
right,
And I would like to argue to the fact of, well, you're right. That's all you are hearing, right? You're hearing about these huge companies. United Health Group, throughout all the congressional hearings they've been through so far, They paid a $22 million ransom to hopefully prevent the data that was stolen from being leaked. But again, you're working with a criminal organization, so what's
Right.
to stop them from selling it to another criminal organization that's
Mm-hmm.
going to leak it anyway?
Right.
In their hearings, they said that they spend approximately 300 million a year in cybersecurity um, protections, and they employ a security team of about 1,300 employees.
Wow. That's amazing.
Now, that's a significant investment, right?
Yeah.
And they still had a very significant breach due to a stupid online portal that
Yep.
did not have MFA enabled.
That's crazy. Well, I mean, it just goes to show you that um, though I think those large companies like that, that's a feather in the cap of these cyber criminals, right? That's their whale. That's what they wanted to take down, right? But these guys still have to eat. So that's where the small businesses come in. You just rattled off, I don't know, 20 questions, 25 questions, right? Of once that breach happens. The problem is if you're sitting there thinking as a small business, right? Well, it's not going to happen to me. But as soon as it does, now you got to start going through that process. How are you going to manage your business and then manage that breach and all those things that you've it's all first time. Like you're going through this for the very first time now. And how do you figure all that out? When you were talking and asking those questions, I'm thinking, man, we should have like a cyber support, a cyber breach support group for CEOs all sitting around a table that, man, I know I got breached and I wish I would have did this sooner. Because that's what they're all going to say, right? They're all going to say that because they wish they would have at least, inspected what they were expecting from their IT personnel. Um, and unfortunately, the IT personnel, I mean, those guys they're not getting treated fairly with the budget that they should be running under.
Yep.
They maybe can't communicate to their leadership what they really need, why they really need those things. So, you got a CFO just looking at it, it's like, Bob just wants to buy another piece of software. Bob just wants to buy another piece of software. Well, it's not the case, right? There has to be better communication. It's a cyber culture, right? Cybersecurity culture that has to start, and it's got to start from the top. And man, oh man, I know we started this as in cyber liability insurance, but this thing can go on and on and on forever as far as what we're talking about and what has to be done. And we've seen it. We're helping companies right now that, my gosh, they were literally like sitting ducks, right? Waiting. They're just sitting there. They're going to get breached. And thankfully, we stopped that from happening with these guys. So, um, yeah, it's a daily thing. We see it every day.
Yeah. 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 I mean, to circle back, right? Because we did get a little off on a little tangent,
Right.
but cyber insurance and cyber security, they go hand in hand, right? Most
Mhm.
insurance policies nowadays, they require some level of technical and administrative controls in place in order for you to even get a policy.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yep.
like Dan said, right, you've got some folks out there that are pencil whipping their attestation forms, and when it comes
Hmm.
down to the brass tacks of making a claim, claim's going to get denied, um, or it's not going to pay out completely.
Right.
Um,
That's the biggest fear, right? Not having the right policy in place with the right amounts in the areas that need to be put in place. I mean, you're just checking a box if you're getting a rider, right? You're checking a box if you're not looking into it and making sure because you're managing risk, right? How much risk is that policy covering for you? If you don't know, man, it's probably not covering very much.
yeah, yeah, and a rider's just not the way to do it, right? You
Right.
know, we're learning more about cyber insurance and the insurance game every day at this
I
point.
know.
I think we've got, I don't know, 8 or 9 different people that we've talked to, and they've all kind of shed some light on some different things.
Right.
You know, I think one of the most important things to bring up about a rider is that the rider sits on top of your general liability policy,
Yeah.
usually. So when you have to make a claim, that claim is going against your general liability policy,
Yeah.
not a comprehensive cybersecurity policy.
Right.
Um,
And now you got to worry about renewal costs going up if they even renew with you. And now
Yep.
you got that black mark on your insurance record. Everyone's going to want to look at it like, oh, you got breached. I mean, now the new person, the new company's going to probably want to look into you even more. Like, what have you done to stop another breach? You've already been
Yep.
breached. What have you done? And now, again, you have to prove that, right? And so you can't just tell people. It's got to be, they want to see it. MFA, is it turned on? Is it turned on for everybody? Can you show me that it's been turned on? Not just, oh, yeah, we got it. We're good. Yeah, we do security awareness training. How's it being done? How are you managing it? Who's doing what? Is everyone like taking the tests? Can you prove that? And some can't.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think at some point, cyber insurance, it's going to be a mandate, right? It's going to be a mandate, just
Oh,
like
yeah.
having auto insurance driving down the road, right?
Yep.
If you're doing business online, you got to have a policy.
Yep.
And I think also, I think you bringing up a great point too, where um, right now, if you have some type of event where you have to make a claim, that's when they start asking for evidence of everything you've attested to.
Hmm.
I think at some point you're probably going to start seeing them wanting evidence to even renew your policy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great point. They're going to look, right? They're going to look. You got to be prepared. Don't wait till
Well,
last minute.
they're losing money left and right, so
Right.
the insurance companies are not in business to lose money, right?
Right. Yeah. They're like casinos. They're not there to lose money. Yeah. So, I mean, hopefully, I know there's a lot more to it, and we're doing this because, we're going to put on a couple of webinars and seminars here in the next 90 to 120 days with a couple different insurance partners, and we want to bring those guys to the table to talk more in detail on that. We'll be able to talk more in detail about the cybersecurity controls that should be in place, and that's really your foundational starting block for a business. Make sure you have the correct cyber liability insurance policy in place, and then make sure you have the right tools in place so that policy will pay out. There's way more above that you should go to, but from a baseline, that's a great starting point for businesses to protect themselves.
Yeah, and I would even say if you can put the controls in place first, your
Hmm.
policy should be the premium for the policy
Right.
should be very affordable, right?
Yeah.
Because you're reducing your risk, which the insurance company looks at and says, "Oh, well, they're
Yeah.
risk adverse. We want to make sure we're covering somebody to a T,
Yep.
with a good policy." So,
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Well, it's got to start somewhere, right? So, like I said, hopefully somebody will listen to this and say like, "Oh man, I guess maybe we should look at that." And if they don't listen to this, we'll be promoting these webinars and seminars out here, and hopefully we'll see them on one of those in the near future.
yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Cool, man. All right, great talk.
You too.
All right, see ya.
Bye.